Okay, guys, when last we left off with Harry Potter, I got interrupted by somebody coming to my door, so I'm hoping to get a good solid 10 minutes in today. So let's do this. I've got Bennett behind me doing ABC mouths, so cross our fingers that he stays occupied so we can do a full 10 minutes. All right. So remember, he couldn't go to Hogsmeade. Poor Harry, nobody would sign his permission slip. He blew up his aunt, so his family wasn't going to sign the permission slip. So now what does he do? We're going to find out. All right, we left off. I'm going to start over at the paragraph over here so we remember. We're on chapter 11 called The Firebolt, okay? Harry didn't have a very clear idea of how he'd managed to get back into the Honeydew cellar. Oh, this is not where we left off. We are way up here, aren't we? I am so sorry. Okay, don't worry about me, said Harry in what he hopes was an offhand voice. I'll see you at the feast. Have a good time. He's not really excited that his friends are going on this field trip without him. He accompanied them to the entrance hall where Filch, the caretaker, was standing inside the front doors checking off names against a long list, peering suspiciously into every face, making sure that no one was sneaking out who shouldn't be going. Staying here, Potter? Shouted Malfoy, who was standing in line with Crabbe and Goyle, scared of passing the Dementors. Harry, ignoring him, made his solitary way up the marble staircase through the deserted corridors and back to Gryffindor Tower. Password, said the fat lady, jerking out of a doze. Fortuna Major, said Harry listlessly. The portrait swung open and he climbed through the hole into the common room. It was full of chattering first and second years and a few older students who had obviously visited Hogsmeade so often that the novelty had worn off. Harry! Hi, Harry! It was Colin Creevey, a second year who was deeply in awe of Harry and never missed an opportunity to speak to him. Aren't you going to Hogsmeade, Harry? Why not? Hey! Colin looked eagerly around at his friends. You can come and sit with us if you like, Harry. No thanks, Colin, said Harry, who wasn't in the mood to have a lot of people staring avidly at the scar on his forehead. I gotta go to the library and get some work done. After that, he had no choice but to turn right around and head back out the portrait hole again. What was the point of waking me up? The fat lady called grumpily after he walked out. Harry wandered dispiritedly through the library, but halfway there he changed his mind. He didn't feel like working. He turned around and came face to face with Filch, who had obviously just seen off the last of the Hogsmeade visitors. What are you doing? Filch snarled suspiciously. Nothing, said Harry truthfully. Nothing, said Filch, his jowls quivering unpleasantly. A likely story. Sneaking around on your own. Why aren't you in Hogsmeade buying stink pellets and belch-powdered whizzing worms like the rest of your nasty little friends? Harry shrugged. Well, get back to your common room where you belong, snapped Filch, and he stood glaring until Harry passed out of sight. But Harry didn't go back to the common room. He climbed a staircase, thinking vaguely of visiting the owlery to see Hedwig, and was walking along the corridor when a voice from inside one of the rooms said, Harry. Harry doubled back to see who had spoken to him, and met Professor Lupin, looking around his office door. What are you doing? Said Lupin, though in a very different tone from Filch. Where are Ron and Hermione? Hogsmeade, said Harry, in a would-be casual voice. Ah, said Lupin. He considered Harry for a moment. Why don't you come in? I've just taken delivery of a Grindylow for our next lesson. A what? Said Harry. He followed Lupin into his office. In the corner stood a very large tank of water. A sickly green creature with sharp little horns had its face pressed against the glass, pulling faces and flexing its long, spindly fingers. It's a water demon, said Lupin, surveying the Grindylow thoughtfully. We shouldn't have much difficulty with him, not after the Kappas. The trick is to break his grip. You notice the abnormally long fingers, strong but very brittle. The Grindylow bared its green teeth and then buried itself in a tangle of weeds in a corner. Cup of tea, Lupin said, looking around for his kettle. I was just thinking of making one. All right, said Harry awkwardly. Lupin tapped the kettle with his wand, and a blast of steam issued suddenly from the spout. Sit down, said Lupin, taking the lid off a dusty tin. I've only got tea bags, I'm afraid, but I dare say you've had enough. Of tea leaves? Harry looked at him, and Lupin's eyes were twinkling. How'd you know about that? Harry asked. Professor McGonagall told me, said Lupin, passing Harry a chipped mug of tea. You're not worried, are you? No, said Harry. He thought for a moment of telling Lupin about the dog he'd seen in Magnolia Crescent, but decided not to. He didn't want Lupin to think he was a coward, especially since Lupin already seemed to think he couldn't cope with a Boggart. Something of Harry's thoughts seemed to have shown on his face because Lupin said, Anything anything worrying you, Harry? No, Harry lied, and he drank a bit of tea and watched the Grindylow brandishing a fist at him. Yes, he said suddenly, putting his tea down on Lupin's desk. You know that day we fought the Boggart? Yeah, said Lupin slowly. Why didn't you let me fight it? Said Harry abruptly. Lupin raised his eyebrows. Well, I thought that would have been obvious, Harry, he said, sounding surprised. Harry, who had expected Lupin to deny that he'd done any such thing, was taken aback. Why? He said again. Well, said Lupin, frowning slightly, I assumed that if the Boggart faced you, it would assume the shape of Lord Voldemort. Harry stared. Not only was this the last answer he'd expected, but Lupin had said Voldemort's name. The only person Harry had ever heard say the name aloud, apart from himself, was Professor Dumbledore. Clearly, I was wrong, said Lupin, still frowning at Harry, but I didn't think it was a good idea for Lord Voldemort to materialize in the staff room. I imagined that people would panic. Well, I did think of Lord Voldemort first, said Harry honestly, but then I remembered those Dementors. I see, said Lupin thoughtfully. Well, I'm impressed, he said, smiling slightly at the look of surprise on Harry's face. That suggests that what you fear most of all is fear. Very wise, Harry. He didn't know what to say to that, so he drank some more tea. So you've been thinking that I didn't believe you capable of fighting the Boggart, said Lupin shrewdly. Well, yeah, said Harry. He was suddenly feeling a lot happier. Professor Lupin, you know the Dementors? He was interrupted by a knock on the door. Come in, called Lupin. The door opened and Snape came in. He was carrying a goblet which was smoking faintly and stopped at the sight of Harry, his black eyes narrowing. Ah, Severus, said Lupin, smiling. Thank you very much. Could you leave it here on the desk for me? Snape set down the smoking goblet, his eyes wandering between Harry and Lupin. I was just showing Harry my Grindylow, said Lupin pleasantly, pointing at the tank. Fascinating, said Snape, without looking at it. You should drink that directly, Lupin. I made an entire cauldron full, Snape continued, if you need more. I should probably take some again tomorrow. Thank you very much, Severus. Not at all, said Snape, but there was a look in his eyes Harry didn't like. He backed out of the room, unsmiling and watchful. Harry looked curiously at the goblet, and Lupin smiled. Professor Snape has very kindly concocted a potion for me, he said. I've never been much of a potion brewer, and this one is particularly complex. He picked up the goblet and sniffed it. Pity sugar makes it useless, he added, taking a sip and shuddering. Why, Harry began, and Lupin looked at him and answered the unfinished question. I've been feeling a bit off color, he said. This potion is the only thing that helps. I'm very lucky to be working alongside Professor Snape. There aren't many wizards who are up to making it. Professor Lupin took another sip, and Harry had a crazy urge to knock the goblet out of his hands. Professor Snape's very interested in the dark arts, he blurted out. Really, said Lupin, looking only mildly interested as he took another gulp of some potion. Some people reckon, Harry hesitated, then plunged recklessly on.
Chocolate. Can I have a chocolate?
A chocolate what, buddy?
Chocolate.
A chocolate what, buddy?
Chocolate. Bunny. Can I have a chocolate bunny?
There's a chocolate egg over there. Do you want to bite a chocolate egg?
Yeah.
Okay. Go get it in the bucket with the silverware over there, okay? It's down inside there, and I'll help you open it. Some people reckon, Harry hesitated and then plunged recklessly on. Some people reckon he'd do anything to get the defense against the dark arts strong.
I can open it.
Lupin drained the goblet and pulled a face. Ugh, disgusting, he said. Well, Harry, I'd better get back to work. I'll see you at the feast. Right, said Harry, putting down his empty teacup. The empty goblet was still smoking. See, Harry thought that Snape might poison him. There you go, said Ron. We got as much as we could carry. A shower of brilliantly covered sweets fell into Harry's lap. It was dusk, and Ron and Hermione had just turned up in the common room, pink-faced from the cold wind and looking as though they'd had the time of their lives. Thanks, said Harry, picking up the packet of tiny black pepper imps. What's Hogsmeade like? Where did you go? By the sound of it, everywhere. Dervis and Banges, the wizarding equipment shop, Zonko's joke shop, into the 3 boomsticks for foaming mugs of hot butterbeer, and many places besides. The post office, Harry, about 200 owls sitting all around, all color-coded depending on how fast you want them to get there. Hold on, I gotta open a chocolate egg.
Is it really sticky?
No, it's just tangled up. There you go, you got it. Honeydukes has got a new kind of fudge. They were giving out free samples. There's a bit. Look. We think we saw an ogre. Honestly, they get all sorts of the 3 broomsticks. Wish we could have brought you some butterbeer. Really warms you up. What did you do? Said Hermione, looking anxious. Did you get any work done? No, said Harry, and Lupin made me a cup of tea in his office, and then Snape came in. He told them all about the goblet, and Ron's mouth fell open. Lupin drank it? Is he mad? Hermione checked her watch. We'd better go down, you know. The feast will be starting in 5 minutes. They hurried through the portrait hole and into the crowd, still discussing Snape. But if he was trying to poison Lupin, he wouldn't have done it in front of Harry. Yeah, maybe, said Harry, as they reached the entrance hall, crossed into the great hall. It had been decorated with hundreds and hundreds of candle-filled pumpkins, a cloud of fluttering live bats, and many flaming orange streamers, which were swimming lazily across the stormy ceiling like brilliant water snakes. The food was delicious, and even Hermione and Ron, who were full to bursting with Honeydukes sweets, managed second helpings of everything. Harry kept glancing at the staff table, and Professor Lupin looked cheerful as well as he ever did. He was talking animatedly to tiny little Professor Flitwick, the charms teacher. Harry moved his eyes alongside the table to the place where Snape sat, where he was he imagining it, or were Snape's eyes flickering toward Lupin more often than natural? The feast finished with an entertainment provided by the Hogwarts ghosts. They popped out of the walls and tables to do a bit of formation gliding. Nearly Headless Nick, the Gryffindor ghost, had a great success with a reenactment of his own botched beheading. It had been such a pleasant evening that Harry's good mood couldn't even be spoiled by Malfoy, who shouted through the crowd as they all left the hall, "The Dementors send their love, Potter!" Harry and Ron followed the rest of the Gryffindors along the usual path to Gryffindor Tower. We're going to stop right there because the next big event is coming and I don't want to cut it in half. So I'm going to post another video here in just a little while because I'm way behind on my Harry Potter videos. So be watching for 2 Harry Potter videos today. Talk to you soon.